Hi everybody and welcome to today's webinar. Today we are going to be looking at the how the process of crowdfunding for sport essentially. We're also going to be joined by Rebecca from Sport England, so she's going to be able to talk through the available funds that you can actually access via crowdfunding for sport on our platform. We're also going to be joined as well by an amazing crowdfunding kind of expert, I'd like to say now. He's a past project owner. He's recently crowdfunded really successfully, so you'll be able to hear all about his experience and his journey as well. Just a few housekeeping points before we get started. We have allowed 30 minutes for this session. It might take a little bit longer than that. It does just depend on the questions we get coming through from you guys. So we will have a Q&A session at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, then please do type it in the chat box on the right hand of your screen. We are all working from home at the moment, so bear with us if there's any unexpected interruptions. Please just refresh your browser. If there's any tech issues, you should come straight back into the live room. And as I say, bear with us if any doorbells ring or dogs bark or anything like that. So as we've only got half an hour, I think without further ado, it would be a really good idea if we could actually bring on Rebecca and she can talk you through the funds that are available. Hi, Rebecca, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you, Zoe?
Good, thank you. So there's two funds available with Sport England, aren't there, at the moment? Would you be able to talk us through both of those, please?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the session today. As Zoe said, we've currently got two match funding initiatives live at the minute from Sport England. One being our 7.5 million Active Together fund, which was one of our recovery funds in response to the pandemic. The fund is available to help the sport and activity sector kind of recover from the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and kind of assist them in the safe return to play. So it's evolved over time. Ultimately, originally it was kind of the initial kind of financial need, whereas now it might be the case of facilities might need adaptations to account for the distancing measures, or it might be also a case of you kind of need to do club improvements or the club needs kind of finances, but they have been depleted through the previous couple of years throughout the pandemic, or kind of those fundraising opportunities have been significantly affected over the past 2 years, in which case crowdfund. The second being our 3.5 million Places and Spaces fund to help community sport organisations improve their facilities and unite communities as part of the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. It's currently only available to the West Midlands region, but it's due to be expanded nationally in the spring. And obviously, if it's kind of a capital project, and you're not based in the West Midlands currently, you're more than welcome to start thinking about that project and thinking about your campaign now. So yeah, across both funds, obviously Zoe will go into more details, but organisations can apply for up to 50% of match funding, with the maximum being £10,000. And a big aim for us when developing these funds is the kind of wraparound support, as we recognise this is quite a new fundraising approach for a lot of you. So make the most of the session today, ask lots of questions, use the online tools, and make the most of hearing from Pitt Street's a live experience as well. So any questions, pop them in the chat or ask at the end, or just drop us, the team at Sport England, an email.
Thank you. That's really great. And hopefully those of you that aren't aware of the funds, you can also go, and I've put some links into the chat box there, so you can actually go and look a little bit more detail in the extra funding part of our website as well. Okay, so if we just move on ever so slightly. So as Rebecca pointed out there, we've got, or Sport England, I should say, our funding partners have got a couple of different funding pots up for grab for those of you in England. There's the Return to Play Active Together, and as Rebecca pointed out, there's £7.5 million available within that. You can actually get up to £10,000 of match funding towards your particular project. And so that would be 50% of your target, up to a maximum of £10,000. And with the Places and Spaces, again, that's up to a £10,000 crowd match fund. So the way in which accessing the match fund actually works, first of all, you would apply via your crowdfunding page, either in the admin, in the editing stages, or you can apply when you're live. We always recommend that you do actually put that application in before going live, because it will give Sport England and ourselves a chance to feed back to you in case there's any improvements or updates to your campaign or your page that you might need to consider in order to actually be approved straight away. You'd then go live, you'd start crowdfunding. Once you hit 25% of your initial target via a required amount of unique supporters. So unique supporters are people who are pledging or donating onto your page using different email addresses and bank cards. They essentially have a different banking footprint. So if you were to have a household of 4 people who all wanted to donate to your crowdfunder, ideally they would be made in 4 separate transactions, all with different contact details and bank details. Obviously, I appreciate that's not possible all of the time, but in terms of extra funding, your overall supporters are a slightly different number compared to your unique supporters, and that's what we're looking for when it comes to extra funding pledges being released onto your page. So you start crowdfunding, you'd reach 25% of your initial target via your required supporters. So if you look at the table at the bottom here, you can see that if your target is up to £5,000, that would need to be you'd need to hit 25% with 25 supporters as a minimum, and rising all the way up to, if your target is above £15,000, you'd need to be looking at 100 supporters and that 25% of your initial target reached in order to release that extra funding. That would then be, the extra funding would then be pledged onto your page. It will show in your target. It would also show as a lovely kind of graphic on your page as well, to show that you've been supported by Sport England and the additional funds. That makes really good content for then posting updates to your page and also to your social media channels, which gives your crowd that little bit more momentum to kind of get behind you and see that actually you're on your way to success. You then continue to crowdfund to reach 100% of your target. Once you've reached 100% of your target, all of the money raised is secured. That is yours. You have your extra funding from Sport England plus all the money raised by the crowd. And that, if that is the end of your crowdfunding campaign, then that obviously would be paid out within a few days. What you can do is, if you are still live at this point, we always recommend actually having a stretch target. So we always recommend that all projects on Crowdfunder plan to essentially crowdfund for the minimum they may need to make a project happen, but also then plan to overfund. So by setting a really realistic target and an additional stretch target, you can continue to raise funds even after you've reached 100% of your initial target. And your stretch target, those additional funds, are things to just make the process of being able to deliver your project a little bit easier. Maybe you needed to be able to revamp the tennis courts, for example, but actually any extra funds could go towards really promoting that or putting some marketing behind it or something along those lines. So you can use your stretch target to add any additional extras onto your project that you feel like you might need as well. Okay, so we're going to hear from Jacob in a little bit. Just want to give you a little bit of an overview of his project. So Jacob Skinner, he was the project owner for Pitt Street and Undercover Skatepark. I'm going to share a link in the chat box as well. I think it's a really amazing project. You guys need to go and have a little check and just have a look through what they're offering as rewards, how they put their page together. But before we come back and speak to Jacob, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to hear a little bit more about the crowdfunding process itself.
Hello everyone. So how does crowdfunding work and what is it? Well, crowdfunding is a great way to raise money and awareness for your organisation by engaging with your community. What you're going to do is create a crowdfunding page on our online platform. And don't worry if you're not too tech savvy, it's very easy to use, very user friendly. You're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side. And then you're going to promote that campaign to your crowd and your community, and they'll then make pledges and donations on your page, and that's how you get funded. So it's really important to make an engaging page. It needs to target the whole community. So try not to fall into that trap of just writing something that's geared towards your club members, because they're most likely going to be engaging with you already. So you really want to reaching out to the wider audience, potentially people who aren't already connected to your sport or your club, and really make the most of crowdfunding and create that awareness of your organisation. So when you're creating your page, what we always recommend is start with some key headlines and organise the content into a very readable order. So if you start with the headline of who you are and outline who you are as a club, your impact in the community, and why you're crowdfunding. So for a lot of you, it will still be the effects of that COVID has had on your organisation, but equally some people are now starting to get over that, and it may be a completely different type of project. So it's important that you just explain what you're actually crowdfunding for, and also how you plan to spend the money. So as a potential supporter, you would be much more likely to pledge or donate to a campaign if you can see the direct impact that your financial contribution will make. Once you have all that information collated, it's time to make your page just look more engaging, more appealing. And the best way to do that is with images and videos. So you can add images in between to the page, in between the text, to break up those blocks of text that you should have. And it also helps to summarise and reflect the key elements of your campaign and show the personality of your club. So what also helps with that, as well as images, is a short video. So 1 to 2 minutes is absolutely plenty. You just want to grab the audience's attention and tell them in a nutshell what your project is all about. And it gives that opportunity to actually connect and engage with the viewers of your page. So it's really important to make sure that you're happy with your page before you go live, but also before applying for the extra funding. So whenever you apply for your extra funding, which you'll do via your project dashboard, the relevant sports organisation will review your page and give you some feedback potentially, and just make sure your page has got everything on it that it needs to be a successful campaign, and before deciding whether to give you a pledge for extra funding or not. Now, Crowdfunder is the UK's top rewards-based crowdfunding platform, as opposed to just purely donations only. So, and really, it's on top of the standard donation that you'd perhaps obviously associate with traditional fundraising. You add these rewards to take your campaign to the next level. So rewards tend to encourage larger and more pledges and enable you to attract pledges from outside your network. So you want to get really inventive and creative with your rewards as much as you can. So try to offer a range of rewards targeted at different audiences. So your members might be tempted by, say, a one-to-one coaching session, or you could offer sponsorship or advertising space to large donors. And then you want to think about those in the wider community who don't necessarily have a connection with your club already, but you want to think about how you can get them to pledge. So what you can do is speak with local businesses who may want to support your campaign. Rather than a financial contribution, or in some cases as well as, they can offer products or services to use as rewards. And offering these at a slight discount means that anyone in the area will be keen to make a pledge to grab themselves a bargain, an exclusive offer. So on the page here, you can see we've got some great examples of rewards that we've seen, such as on the right-hand side there, we've got 2 hours of conversational Greek lessons. In the middle at the bottom, we've got a fish and chips voucher. And then up at the top left, we've got Power Auto's MOT voucher. So you can see there's a bit of things that are totally unrelated to sport, but that is making it appealing much to a much wider audience. Now, another great thing that you can do with a sports crowdfunding campaign is to use our multiplier feature. It's really effective for sports clubs. It allows people to essentially fundraise on behalf of your project. So perhaps you might have some individuals that want to do something special to raise funds for the club, like a sponsored swim or run a marathon. Or perhaps you have different teams or squads within your club who fancy a bit of competition to see who can raise the most or cycle the furthest or run the furthest. It's a great way to get more people involved in promoting the campaign and tapping into their personal networks. So reaching an even wider audience, and it can add a great competitive element to a campaign too. So you can see this example on the screen now was run by Spencer Lacrosse Club in 2021, and they had 44 fundraisers, so 44 individuals, each with their own fundraising page, and all the money that they raise via there feeds into the main project page. So it's a really great way to get people truly engaged with your fundraising efforts. So crowdfunding works and sports go really hand in hand very well. Sports crowdfund really well. So you can see here there's a selection of different types of projects, and that's just a very small handful. So they range from speed skating to swimming to gymnastics. Sports clubs are often at the heart of the community, and by definition you have a group of potentially competitive people who directly benefit from the project. So whatever sport it might be, it crowdfunds really well, and you really want to have that common goal in mind, and all crowdfund together. One of the next steps you can take, the most important steps, is to use our online learning facility. So we've got a free online course specifically geared for crowdfunding sports clubs, and that will give you even more detail behind the basics that I've just gone over now, telling you how to create the perfect page. There's lots of tips on how to actually run your crowdfunder and pull it together. So definitely go on and do that online learning course after this webinar, and then go on to help create your perfect page and apply for the funding. So best of luck to you all.
Oh, hi there, I am back. Right, let me just pull up. I think it would be a brilliant time now. Hopefully you guys have all learned a little bit more about crowdfunding. It might be something that you've not actually kind of encountered before. It might be a completely new way of actually raising funds for your club. But in order to get a really good idea of what that might entail, it would be brilliant if we could hear from Jacob as well. So are you there, Jacob?
I am. Hi, Zoe.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. You? All good.
Good, thank you. Thank you for sitting kind of in the background while we went through all of those kind of crowdfunding basics and the fund itself. But it would be really lovely if you could just give us a little bit of an overview of your project, please, for those that haven't had a chance to kind of check it out.
So the Undercover Skatepark project has been in my head for a long time. It's been a dream of mine. The area we live in, we don't have a skate park with a roof on it, and everywhere in England needs a skate park with a roof on it. And it originally was meant to be built under the M275 flyover, which is just like an underpass. But, it's now turned into this colossal beast that I never imagined it would be. But, the community elements are phenomenal, and it's gone from being this dream to a very, very nearly a reality. Yeah, we're really close now. So
that's so good. So why did you guys just for everyone in the chat, actually, just for everyone here today, I've just actually shared that link into the chat box, so I highly recommend people kind of go and have a little look at that. And we can see just from the money raised as well, so you had 523 supporters, so that's a huge amount of community support, raising that £31,000. What was that kind of catalyst for you to crowdfund as opposed to kind of traditional forms of fundraising or money kind of raising?
I mean, we know crowdfunding is a great channel. There's so many different avenues, especially with like the way the world is and social media, and it's the best platform. But also, we like the fact you can reward people. They're not just asking for their money; they're paying to become part of the project, which is really great, and it gets people more engaged and more involved, which is what we're all about anyway here. So.
Amazing. Yeah. Did you find any parts of the process difficult at all, or did it come quite naturally to you?
Well, I mean, I've had quite a lot of practice with things like this, but it's daunting. Like it's quite a big number to be asking, and the fact, and initially look at it, it's like, well, it's quite a lot of money, but proves it can happen, and if people believe in what you're doing, and they want it to happen just as much as I do, which proves they do, you know, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I think when people take a look at your page, they'll get a real sense of the passion behind the project. And it's something that we always talk to project owners about, is kind of being able to really tell your story in an engaging way. And that is just about explaining to people kind of why it's important to you as well as the community, allowing yourself to kind of be a bit visible on the page. So that's in videos and also in the text on the page as well. So your video is great because obviously it's you talking to camera and just explaining kind of the process and what you want to do. And that, I think, is something that's a real takeaway piece of advice for people here today, that your video can just be a member of the club or the project owner just talking to camera and explaining what you're going to do. And that is probably the most engaging thing you can do as a project owner with that video. What did you find worked the best with the process? Was there anything that you thought, yeah, we've nailed it? That's definitely worked.
Well, I'll touch on the point you made about the me sat there with just on camera. I'm lucky enough to have my friend that I've been doing this stuff with for years. So if anyone's out there doing this stuff, engage with someone that you know, because you build a relationship on that, and it becomes so much easier. The other day we filmed a little update and I done it first try. That never happens. And I was like, I thought I was going to move the plans around, and I was like, we've been here for 3 minutes. I was like, let's go. Amazing. Yes. With the rewards, what I found, do smaller sort of engaging rewards. Like our biggest seller was the flexi ticket, and it's £10, and that allows anyone access for a whole day, for 1 day from when we open and 12 months afterwards. So, you know, if they want to come to the open day, they've got access to that. And just think like realistic things. Obviously, some of them, you know, it's all realistic, but the larger sums of money, you know, it's not always easy for everyone. But, you know, a lot of people just wanted to even chuck us a fiver just because they wanted to see us succeed. Yeah.
And I think being able to, like you say, kind of be realistic, but also make sure that people are getting real rewards or sourcing rewards that are within their kind of capacity. And so for you guys, that ticket is a no-brainer, isn't it? Because once you're open, it's going to be so easy for you to deliver that. So just clubs and organizations just need to have a think about what they can deliver as an organisation and what's within their capacity going forward. But also people want to support you because they want to support you. So if you say to them, yes, you can have this flexi ticket when we open, and that might be in 6 months time, that might be in, 12 months time, it's not, because you're doing so well, but just be transparent, I guess, on that kind of reward as to when people can expect to receive it. Exactly. I think is quite a good piece of advice. Other than financial, I mean, we've touched on it a little bit. You can see just from the amount of support that you had, but other than the financial benefits, would you say that the crowdfunding campaign has brought additional benefits to
100%, 110%. Also, I must say thank you to you guys at Crowdfunder, because you have all been really engaging. And what's the name of the lady? Come to me in a bit. Sue. I spent a lot of time speaking to Sue, and it's real. It's nice to be able to pick up the phone and actually be able to just phone someone, and you were there for me during this experience. And what was the other part of the point? I digressed a little bit.
The non-financial benefits of crowdfunding, what that might bring to your project.
I think just the expanse now, like it's really sort of pushed us out, and people are aware of us, and I'm meeting up with people, and we're sorting out all these little bits, and they're like, oh, they've already heard about what you're doing. So just the promotional sort of factor, is that what you call it? I guess it's promotional.
Let's call it that.
Yeah. And yeah, just it's opened up a lot of avenues. We're now in talks with Sport England about all sorts of things, and it's just just legitimised what we've done. Although it was already legit, it's just made it double legit.
Yeah, double legit. That's what you want going forward. Yeah. It's that kind of credibility, isn't it? Like anything that you do now with the skate park, you can refer back to this kind of platform. You can refer back to your crowdfunder and go, look, the community want it. We've proved that we're kind of viable. It's a valid thing to be happening. And I think for a lot of people, crowdfunding, understanding that it doesn't actually have to just stop at the end of that crowdfunder. You've got all of that information kind of centralized on our platform. You've got comments of support from your community. You've obviously got the money raised, so you can refer back to that and use it for additional promotion or additional marketing going forward. So it's a great thing to kind of do, to just actually bring your story into one place that everyone can come and view as well. What would you give as a kind of a piece of like takeaway advice for anyone that's here that hasn't started their crowdfunding journey yet, or they might be a bit stuck? What would you kind of advise them in terms of getting started, or how to make the best out of that crowdfunding journey?
So be realistic. Don't get bogged down by it. It's hard sometimes at the start, and sometimes it can be a bit slow, and engaging with your crowd and getting out there. But just keep the faith. And, you know, if your project is worth supporting, it will be, because you wouldn't be doing it in the first place. And just keep your chin up, and don't check your crowdfunder 25 times a day. Do it once in the evening when you're having a coffee, or you're sitting down. You don't have coffee in the evening, do you? When you're sitting down relaxing after your day's work, just don't let it take over. But at the same time, you've got to be on it. Yeah, and just be positive about what you're doing, because, you know, proof's in the pudding at the end of the day. Yeah. You're
completely right. The proof is in the pudding, and it is as much as an exercise in kind of marketing and awareness as it is in like fundraising. So just kind of being brave and putting your idea out there, although it might be a little bit scary, you'll soon find out whether actually it is something the community kind of want to get behind as well. And that can be scary in itself, but you're right, it is a bit of a job, isn't it? It's almost like taking on an extra job as well as your full-time jobs or running your club. So if you can get a team of people around you, that's probably the best thing to do, to make sure you're not taking it all on yourself. And like you say, don't get consumed with it, but kind of be reactive, I think, as well, is key, isn't it? Like you were, you know, you added additional rewards throughout the course of your campaign. You were kind of on it with seeing what was working and how you could tweak the campaign to make sure you were hitting all of those areas of your network and kind of appealing to the whole community. So be reactive, absolutely.
And we really, really listened as well. There were, you know, as we were in the middle of the journey, because this has been a chapter of the project, the crowdfunder, like, there were times we were going to launch it earlier when we almost put it off because it didn't fit in with everything else that was going on, because we had so much going on. But, you know, we had people suggest certain things, and some of them we ended up putting in, and it worked. So, you know, rule is we're learning as we go too.
And that makes, you know, that makes you approachable as a project owner, and that means that people are going to want to get behind you even more. So you've done incredibly well, and I wish you all the success with actually opening. Did you say 3 months? And then
spring. I say I've not put a date on it yet. I'm pretty open and pretty. But we were saying April the 1st, April Fool's Day.
Yeah, amazing.
You know, we are aiming for spring. There's a lot going on. We've got, you know, we start the full build of the skate park next week. We've already started bits and bobs. So, you know, we're trying to get it done as quick as we can with the budget that we have. But we're doing a bit more juggling with some other bits. But, you know, we'll be with you soon.
Amazing. That's such good news. Well done, because as I say, it's a brilliant example of a successful crowdfunder. You guys did incredibly well. I can see while we've been talking that some questions have been coming through actually. So if we could welcome Rebecca back on as well, and let's see if we can work through some of these questions. I'm hoping. Right, let's have a little look. You can hang on, Jacob. You might have some specifically for you.
Sure, okay.
Okay, so this is going to be for you, Rebecca. Imagine, does receiving COVID relief measures like business grants for ratepayers affect the chance of getting crowdfunder grants from Sports England? So I guess they're talking about the match funding as opposed to grants, because it's the whole idea is that it's a match fund, isn't it? It's not just a kind of pure grant as such.
Yeah, obviously, I think would need to know kind of clearer details on that front in terms of business rates. But ultimately, especially from the beginning of the pandemic, we completely were aware that other people were kind of sourcing as much funding as they could to kind of keep their organisations up and running. In terms of the crowdfunder campaign itself, ultimately, as Zoe touched on earlier, we advise people to get kind of supporter numbers, so we know the raise is coming from a crowd per se, so it can't just be a match for grant funding you've received elsewhere, or a big lump sum to pop on the page where you've received it elsewhere. Also, just in terms of eligibility as well, all the details are on the homepages of both Place and Space Selected Together. The fund itself is kind of for not-for-profit organisations, so that also might help in terms of kind of if you're eligible, if not. But if you want further details, drop us an email, and I'm sure we can kind of give you a bit more further info on that.
Perfect, thank you. There's a few actually that have asked about recordings. The whole session is being recorded, and we will send a follow-up email as well, so that will contain not only the replay for today, but also any relevant links. So all those links to the funds and the T's and C's and fees for crowdfunder, all those kind of things will go into that email. A question here from Martin. When it says up to 50%, that's tricky to plan around. Do some projects not get a 50% offer? If so, why not? And what criteria are they not given it by? Do some projects get told that they're not going to be match funded?
Yeah, so it's up to, across both funds, it's up to 50%, maximum £10,000 for the pledge. Ultimately, I'd try and advise kind of prospective kind of applicants, try not to think about the criteria per se, because as Zoe said, it's not like a traditional grant application. The main thing is about creating the best campaign page as possible. And ultimately, from our experience and from the team at Crowdfunding's experience, we know if you've got a great page with kind of the text, rewards, images, a video, it will definitely succeed. So in terms of our pledge, it's up to 50%. It's kind of assessed based on your IMD, which is kind of your area of deprivation, which is what we pull from your postcode, which you pop on your application form, and whether or not you might kind of tailor or have a clear focus on certain priority groupings, which align with our strategy. So that's where it comes on to. Ultimately, it is always up for discretion. And if you feel like you kind of adhere to those priority groups and we've kind of offered you a 30 or 40% pledge, then we can kind of look into that for you. But that is why we kind of aim to tailor it.
Perfect. Thanks, Rebecca. This is a question from Yaz. We're hoping to have lots of volunteers do different fundraising activities for us. Is there a way to track this on the crowdfunder campaign? Donors can select the activity they support. Yes, essentially, we watched a little bit, didn't we, about the crowdfunding itself, and there is a multiplier function. I actually shared a link into the chat box. I'll pop it in the email as well. So you can set up a crowdfunding page. You can actually decide to become a multiplier, and what that does is it allows anybody to fundraise on your behalf. So whether that's club members or local members of the community, they'll have their own little page, their little crowdfunding page, all for their specific fundraiser, and all that money will channel onto your crowdfunding page and your target, and they will actually come under the heading of a fundraiser for your particular project. So yes, you can do that. I hope that answers your question there. Just moving on, this is from Henrietta, I think. A sport club I know offered lifetime membership as a reward. Is this acceptable, and can this count towards the match funding target? We do have lots of memberships offered as rewards, actually. Quite often we find a good way is, if you have the capacity to deliver that, then of course you can have memberships of, you know, varying kind of structure as rewards, whether that be an annual membership or a lifetime membership. You just have to make sure that, one, you can deliver that, and you're obviously pricing it accordingly. But yes, we sometimes find clubs actually shift all of their membership onto a crowdfunder for that particular period of time, so that if people are going to sign up for the next year, for example, they're doing it via a crowdfunding reward as opposed to the traditional ways, maybe on their website or, you know, the club itself. So yes, you can do, just make sure you have the capacity to deliver on those rewards.
I just add on that as well, that we definitely don't kind of discourage membership rewards. We just encourage clubs to remember it can't be solely club focus or organisation focused rewards. One of the big points of the campaign is to, as kind of one of the big focuses of Jacobs, is to kind of widen your reach, and kind of ultimately all your members are probably going to drop in a bit of money anyway. So it's about kind of sourcing some kind of local business rewards, looking a bit more outwardly facing, and it kind of attracts new audiences and a far wider supporter base.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. That's a good point, actually. Okay, so next question. Does additional funding over the target amount qualify for match funding? I think you're referring to a stretch target there. So the match funding will be based on your initial target. It won't be based on your stretch target. That will come into play once you've actually hit that initial 100%. That 100% initial target will be what is matched, up to 50%. Or £10,000. So absolutely plan to overfund, but really your initial target is what you'd be aiming for your match funding. Okay, question from Lucy. Bear with me, kind of scrolling up and down the chat box. What is the timeline for claiming the match funding? I wonder whether that's a bit of we could talk about the actual funds itself. I'm pretty sure there's no kind of time frame at the moment, is there? It's until the money's gone, I think. Is that correct, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Whether that's a question in terms of when the pledge gets dropped onto your campaign, because the pledge will be dropped on once you've hit. Kind of, I think Zoe flashed up the slide earlier. Once you've hit that 25% raise of your total via the supporter numbers, that will be dropped onto your live campaign. So when your campaign finishes, you can then withdraw that into your kind of wallet on the Crowdfunder platform. As for if it's to do with the funds running out, ultimately there's plenty left in the pot for both Active Together and Places and Spaces. So ultimately it's just whenever it runs out. So we haven't got a closing date, but ultimately, specifically with Active Together per se, it's kind of an emergency response campaign. So I just kind of, if you've got a project in mind, get it up and running, basically.
Perfect, thank you. And in terms of payouts at the end, if you have been accepted and approved for match funding, you'll receive 2 separate payouts, one from Crowdfunder itself, which will be obviously the money raised from the crowd, and then your match funding will come in a separate pot. So you can expect to receive those kind of pots of money around kind of 7 days approximately for the crowdfunding money to drop after you've closed. Might take a little bit longer for extra funding because it's a separate separate kind of provider that we use for the extra funding, so they can take a little bit longer. Okay, next question from Matt. Why is the crowdfunding period limited? I'll touch on it a little bit, and I think you could probably talk about it, Jacob, as well, because you probably have experience. But from us looking kind of obviously at our collective data over years of running Crowdfunder, we know that all crowdfunding campaigns are in a bit of a U shape. So people get all excited and they pledge on your page, and then it kind of drops into the bottom of a U, and then as you're about to close, it kind of creeps back up with pledges as well. So you really have to try and maintain that momentum from launching all the way through until your close date, and that is a lot of work. Sometimes we find just by increasing the length of your crowdfunder doesn't mean you'll kind of receive more pledges. You just potentially increase the bottom slump of your crowdfunder where people aren't engaging because they don't see the urgency or there's not that excitement about launching. But what was your kind of experience with it, Jacob?
It was about keeping people interested and engaged, and after a little bit, it does become a bit taxing on your life. So I was in talks with Sue about extending it a bit more, and there was extra funding we were applying for. But once we received the extra funding from Sport England, we hit our target, and it's good there's a limit on it, because you can't carry on one of those things forever, and it reaches its peak, as you said, and otherwise I think people that had pledged during that time as well, if they see it keep getting extended, will start, I don't know, maybe being a bit confused by why it's being moved on so long.
People like the sense of urgency. What you want to try, and this kind of answers the next question as well about can you run a campaign for longer than 8 weeks? I mean, yes, you can. We kind of say kind of ultimately, 10 at the most, if you can really. Ideally you want to be looking at kind of 4 to 6 weeks is the sweet spot, and by the sweet spot I mean you hopefully have the capacity to keep that momentum going when you're planning in obviously your promotion, your activity, being engaged with your page, making sure that you're being reactive throughout the course of the live campaign. But also think about your crowd. You're living and breathing crowdfunder for that period of time. The people in your crowd aren't, but at the same time, you don't want them to get fatigued by the same message of we're crowdfunding, please donate, please donate. So that's why you need to make sure you're having varied content throughout the course of your live campaign. That means that you are approaching people in various forms as well, you know, via social media, but picking up the phone, maybe doing events. It's a lot of work to keep people kind of engaged and keep that momentum up for a set period of time. So we've seen that campaigns that run between 4 to 6 weeks, ideally kind of 5, are the ones that seem to be able to kind of close successfully and keep that momentum going. So yes, you can run it for longer, but it doesn't necessarily mean it would be more successful. Okay. This is from Ellen. Can the pledges come from current membership? I think we kind of touched on that a little bit as well, didn't we, earlier? That yes, and you will have people within your club that are going to be donating anyway, or they might be kind of deciding to get their membership via your crowdfunder. But as Rebecca explained earlier, that especially for accessing those extra funds, Sport England in particular, and well, all of our funding partners actually really want you to see that engagement with the community, so your wider community, not just from your kind of club members. So make sure that rewards are varied and appealing to a wider audience as well. Okay, we've got a few more coming in. I appreciate the time. Thanks for hanging with us, guys. We'll just fire through as many of these as we can. Can you negotiate the crowdfunding platform fee, not charity status registered? There are different fee structures depending on your organisation type. I'll pop a link to the fees in the follow-up email, so you can go onto that kind of table and see where you fit. But essentially, not-for-profits and so not-for-profit organisations and charities don't have a platform fee, so they're not charged to actually create their page and use all of our online tools and resources. But all of the transactions that are made to Crowdfunder do come with a transaction fee, and that is because we use a third-party transaction provider, so we can't actually avoid those fees. But yes, if you're a not-for-profit, you wouldn't be eligible for a platform fee. But all of the information on fees I'll include in the email as well. What are the pros and cons of keeping the funds, returning them if you don't reach your target? Essentially, for the match funding, it's a case of, you know, making sure that you are kind of doing the crowdfunding exercise, I guess, isn't it, Rebecca? And actually kind of creating that financial kind of fundraising from your crowd. It's almost that kind of contract, for want of a better word, between the two, isn't it? That yes, you're going to match fund, but you need to be able to hit that 100% in order to get it, in order to secure it.
Yeah, and I think that whether she's touching on the kind of keep what you raise function or kind of always on, I think that's the thing, in line with depending on the timeline you wish to go for. It's kind of that creating that sense of urgency for people to pledge, definitely. And yeah, I think it kind of encourages supporters to donate. And like with us as well, we kind of want to see that kind of supporter and fundraise come from the crowd. So that's why we kind of drop it in when we do.
And it can sound a little bit scary, I imagine, for projects as well, thinking, well, if we don't hit it, we're not going to get any money. But actually, as scary as it sounds, it does work really well as a catalyst for people to get behind you, because if you're transparent with what's happening as well and letting people know that unless you hit your target, you're not going to receive any money, it does, as I say, become a catalyst for people to really get behind you.
Yeah, and just to emphasize as well what we've already said, kind of ourselves at Sport England and Crowdfunder are here to help you and support you through the process. Ultimately, we want to see as many campaigns succeed as possible. And ultimately, if you've got a great campaign page with all those elements we've touched on, I guarantee you will succeed. I think we've kind of funded nearly 600 campaigns now. And of that, I think 5 or 6 have failed to reach their target. And we know why they failed. And they were very, very early on in the kind of process of our kind of extra funds. And it was because they kind of didn't promote it at all on social media. They didn't kind of make kind of some of the improvements we suggested. So we know exactly why. So as long as you kind of listen, as Jacob said, as to some of the feedback we've got and Crowdfunder have got, try not to feel daunted about lose the pledge if you don't reach your target. We want to do as much as we can to support you reaching that target ultimately.
Yeah, you're right, there's a lot of support there. Nobody wants to see it fail. We'll all kind of help you get there. This is quite an interesting one actually about startups, because obviously Active Together is a kind of post-pandemic return from kind of COVID recovery basically. So does Sport England, does the match funding, would it work for a not-for-profit fitness club startup?
So we definitely don't kind of exclude them. What I would say is, if the startup idea or organisation has come about as a response of the pandemic, so if you've identified need for a certain organisation or for a certain club, if you've seen a gap in the area in terms of facility, kind of usage, and you want to kind of create that off the back of the pandemic, and you can kind of clearly show that throughout your campaign, yes, it would be eligible. Again, not for profit, all the eligibility criteria is on our pages. But yeah, you'll just have to kind of show a clear link between why you're a new kind of organisation. That's all.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, I'm just really a bit conscious of time at the moment. How do I arrange a call to speak to somebody? Well, what we'll do, I'll put all relevant kind of information in that follow-up email. We do have, I'm just going to quickly share into the chat box as well. And again, keep saying it, but I'll put it all into the email. We hold weekly drop-in sessions each week. So you can book onto those the same way that you did today's webinar. They're a kind of a drop-in Q&A session via Zoom. You can come along with any questions that you might have, and we can kind of go through any specific project questions or anything that you have regarding starting your crowdfunder. That's probably the easiest way going forward, but I will share all relevant links, as I say. So this one, just really quickly for you, Rebecca. So this is from Ian. Their club is based in an affluent area, although members come from a wider area. How will that affect their application?
Not at all, hopefully. Ultimately, if you've got kind of an affluent area, you may potentially receive a lower percentage pledge from us based on your IMD, but that certainly won't kind of affect your capacity to raise a high amount. Ultimately, we kind of record or kind of extract quite a huge amount of data from our funds, and as a whole, through kind of doing that sliding scale of percentages based on location, we haven't seen a change in average raise amounts across IMD, kind of affluent, least affluent areas. So it's been really successful. As you say, if you do think you've got a wider reach than your kind of facility IMD area suggests, then we can look into that for you. Like I said, if you can kind of submit some kind of anonymous postcode data of all your memberships, and we can kind of look into that and see if in fact a lot of your members are actually coming from wider areas, and in which case we will kind of bump up that pledge. What I would just kind of reiterate is as well, if, for example, you don't get the full 50% match pledge, that 100% doesn't mean your campaign won't be successful. In a lot of ways, it kind of encourages your crowd to kind of spur them on and donate even more so. So try not to kind of let that affect you, or kind of reconsider what your kind of overall fundraising target is. If anything, for a lot of organisations coming through, I think they set their targets superficially low, because again, it is a daunting process. But in actual fact, if you've got a great campaign page, a kind of slightly less pledge from us certainly won't kind of affect your ability to kind of reach your target.
Amazing, thank you. And there's lots of information as well on as part of our Learn platform about setting those realistic targets and thinking about kind of your audience reach and how potentially big or small your crowd might need to be, so your audience to be able to bring that kind of target in. Yeah, and if donations, and if for whatever reason you do want to kind of play it a little bit safe and you've set a lower target, and that's kind of obviously our target, our pledge will be reviewed based on the 50% of that target you set. If you end up kind of kicking off and it's going phenomenally well, come back into us and we can potentially look at increasing our pledge amount if you increase that total to kind of spur on your supporters as well. So there is the option. So there is lots of support, isn't there, both from Sport England and from Crowdfunder, and I think Jacob could probably agree.
100%. You guys have been great. Thank you for your help.
because we like to see
As
people
well.
succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there. Like,
Yay.
nice. Yeah.
Well, we'll all have to come for a skate.
Do you know we've got a roller disco too? It's a wheeled sports facility, so you can have roller disco. So you should make sure you do that.
Yeah.
Make sure you put an update and invite us all along on your page.
100%,
You'll be
yeah.
suddenly flooded with loads of people.
That's okay. That's what we want.
As long as you provide pads and helmets.
Yeah, I was going to say,
You can sign a waiver.
maybe a few margaritas to give me the courage to actually put pair of skates on. But thank you so much for everybody that's joined us, and to Rebecca and Jacob as well. I think it's been really informative, and hopefully lots of people that have been with us today will actually have the kind of confidence now to at least sign up and kind of make use of the Learn platform, work your way through those extra funding kind of criteria and see if there's something which is a match for you. But without, I think we've kind of covered everything. So I hope we'll let everybody get on with their day. We've overrun a bit, but I think we've crammed a lot in as well. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks,
Cheers,
all.
guys.
Take care.
Thanks, Zoe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.